Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video is all about growing in containers and in vertical towers. Those are GreenStalk towers. I'm affiliated with them. You can check out the video description for more information. I'm also growing in root pouches. I sell these at my seed shop, but you can really grow in any size container. So for the second video in the series, I will link the first one in. It really talks about setting up the soil and prepping. I wanted to have a lot of stuff growing so you could get some ideas of what you can actually grow in larger containers. So for my containers, that's 100 gallons right there. This is a number 5 container, which sometimes they say 5 gallons, but it's actually 4 gallons. Then I have 10-gallon containers, and then right over here I have 20-gallon containers. And why is that important? When you first start growing in containers, you're putting in tiny seedlings and you think, oh, maybe a tomato plant will do great in something like that. And they do when they're small. But eventually they get to size, the root systems overtake the container, and then you struggle with watering and feeding and the plants just don't do well. So you have to match the size of the mature plant to the right container size. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. I'll also go over that in the series if you want to subscribe and follow me. So it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. You may be just getting out into your garden and you're going to plant cool weather crops like peas or lettuce or kale. It may be kind of like Maryland right now. The cool weather's finishing up and then you're planting your peppers and tomatoes. So maybe you missed the cool weather crops today, but you can plant cool weather crops again in the fall. So everything you see here, cool weather crop wise in Maryland, in places that have extended seasons, you can plant cool weather crops spring into summer, late summer into fall. So let's just start with some basics. This is 100 gallons, as I said. This is a determinate variety tomato. I just put it in. It's an early girl, I believe. Let me just take a look. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a patio. So this is a dwarf variety. The dwarf variety tomatoes you could put in something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, because they only get to a set height. You have the determinate tomatoes get to a set height like 3 feet. They flower, produce fruit, and then die off. This is a really large container. You can grow anything you want in here. Squash, zucchini, indeterminate tomatoes, which I'll talk about in a second. On the outer edge, I have onions growing. That's because we love onions. I also want to see if they help deter certain pests that come in. So in here, I have a smaller determinate variety tomato. In this space right in the middle, I could plant in 4 pepper plants. I could even put in a indeterminate tomato that's going to get 6 or 8 feet. One of them right in the middle. I would have to stake it. It would do really well. If it's the cool weather, you could put in lettuces around a different area, like I did in this 20-gallon pot. Beautiful red sail lettuce. There's 1, 2, 3 in there. Peas coming up the middle, onions tucked in there. That's all in a 20-gallon pot. As they grow, they get to size. The lettuce would be harvested now, the peas would continue to grow, and I could actually drop in some pepper plants where the lettuce is right now because we're going into our warm season. And in a 20-gallon pot like this, you can easily grow a single zucchini plant, squash plant, maybe 2 cucumber plants, a indeterminate tomato, because they get really large. You could put in 2 or 3 determinate tomatoes, not all at once. You know, this is a choice of the different things. You could put in really, you could probably squeeze in 6 pepper plants into here if you really wanted to put them closely together. But this would easily hold 4 pepper plants. So 20 gallons is a lot. And that's what I tend to recommend for the bigger plants. Not because it can't be done in smaller containers, but because when they get to size, you have the full heat of your summer going. You have full-size plants pulling out the moisture and nutrients. If you just miss watering once and the soil dries out, it damages your plant. So the bigger the container, the more leniency or leeway you have in figuring out, well, kind of setting up your watering routine. And the bigger the container is, if you miss something in the heat of July, you have a little more leeway before that soil dries out. So you really want to think about how often you can water, how often are you around in July if you're not on vacation, and can you really maintain these different containers. Vertical tower. So this is on its way to being planted up with different kinds of things. Up top I have my chives. They're flowering beautifully. These are all going to get picked, put into vinegar for chive vinegar that you would use in salads. or for making salad dressings. The loose leaf lettuce is looking beautiful. Popped in, let's just see, this is a tiny Tim tomato. So you don't want to grow the indeterminate tomatoes in here. They're just, you could, I mean, I've done it, I've tested it out. There's at least 7 gallons worth of material in each of these tiers of potting mix or starting mix or whatever you're making, container mix. It would only be 1 tomato, but they get really big and then they shade out the other plants, so I don't really recommend it. I recommend the determinate varieties. This one's going to get not more than 2 feet tall. It'll trail down, produce fruit, works perfect in here. In a 7-tier GreenStalk, maybe 2 determinate tomatoes per tier. You can also grow peppers in here. I have a pepper that I put in a couple weeks ago. That's starting to take off. I got to trim back these horseradish leaves so that it gets the full sun. You could put in, I've actually planted every pocket with pepper plants. I planted like, I don't know, I can't remember now, maybe 24 plants in here 5 or 6 years ago. Works really well. The more plants you have in that get larger, the quicker they pull the moisture out of here. So that's always your strategy or your struggle, but it's always a strategy to figure out how can you maintain the moisture for your vertical towers and for your containers. I have kale. Kale gets really large. This is beautiful red Russian kale. I recommend 1 or 2 plants per tier, and I'll be harvesting this soon. Kale is a great transitional crop. You plant it when it's cool, it can take a frost and freeze, but it will grow through the summer. So you're always looking for kind of a plan, like this whole tier right here, lettuce, lettuce, lettuce. This is all going to get harvested over the next week. I will loosen up the soil, clear it out. I could put in bush beans, I could put in some dwarf tomatoes, I could pop in a couple of pepper plants. All kinds of different things can go into these pockets. Down lower, Swiss chard's getting beat up by an insect, but this will also grow through the summer. It's a great transition crop. Start it in the cool weather, grow it through the summer. And I would really probably stick with 1 Swiss chard in a tier. You just don't need really more of it because it gets huge. And you want to keep in mind, how are these plants going to do when it really begins to get warm? And you don't have to, this is the one thing I want to stress, you don't have to plant every pocket of your tower at once. You can do, you know, maybe 6 heads of lettuce, 7 heads of lettuce is plenty. A kale plant, you leave some pockets open, you pop in some marigolds, you slowly add to it. You don't have to keep, you know, making sure every pocket is full. Bush beans would do well in here. You could put 1 or 2 bush bean seeds in here. That would be beautiful. Things that won't grow in here, really a zucchini, a squash, they're just going to be massive. You could maybe do a bush cucumber down at the bottom. That's the other strategy you want to keep in mind. If you put a bush cucumber up here and it's dropping all the way down, it's going to shade your plant. So things that get bigger, maybe bushier, go down at the bottom. If you were growing peas, I would put the peas in the bottom. 3 pea seeds per pocket. You could plant up a whole tier with peas, let them grow up, and you do have to sort of trellis them with sticks. You can also buy a trellising system for the GreenStalk tower. But these are just wonderful. Not even maybe 2 foot by 2 foot space. Right there, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiers. So you can just see how beautifully things are doing. I've started tomato plants. There go my dogs. I'm putting garlic around them. I'm putting onions around them. Again, I'm experimenting with pests and disease. These are tomato plants, all tomato plants are warm weather crops. They can't take a frost or they get damaged. But you have early varieties that can take the cold better and grow better. So this is a Siberian, this is a glacier, and right in here is a subarctic max. All indeterminate varieties. They'll produce cherry type tomatoes, maybe a little bit bigger. So I get these in pretty early, make sure they don't get any frost damage in case a frost rolls in early. But there's some of my first tomatoes to go out. This is a 10-gallon container, 1 determinate, or I'm sorry, I want to be clear because I don't want to confuse people. This is a 10-gallon container, 1 indeterminate tomato. That's a 20-gallon container, 1 indeterminate tomato. The difference again is this one's going to be a little more forgiving if you forget watering, but you can grow them in a 10-gallon container. You just have to water more frequently. Back there you see 2 tomato plants. Those are determinate varieties. You can pack the determinate varieties, 2 per 10 gallons, maybe 3 in a 20 gallon. Have onions. I have kale from last season. This is a tomato that really doesn't like the cold. It's an early girl, so it kind of looks a little bit beat up and kind of yellow. It's going to come back because it's warming up now, so it'll be perfectly fine. But just in comparison, the plants that can manage the cold better, they're nice and green. These are 100-gallon root pouches. So I wanted to just show you some of the stuff that you can put in here. Early girl tomato. It was protected, unlike the one I just showed you. Nice size, middle of May. This will start producing in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll have tomatoes in June. I'm putting in 1 indeterminate variety in here because it's going to get really big. I'm going to be using my fence to kind of trellis it on. I dropped in 1, 2, 3 broccoli plants, and I wanted to show you how large they get, because we're going to have that tendency to really overplant these spaces, not thinking about how big the plants get. Garlic's in there, but you could put in 3 broccoli plants. Hopefully my weather holds. I get nice broccoli crowns. These will come out. I could put peppers in there. I could put a bush cucumber in there. I could set up a trellis. I could grow green beans up it. 100 gallons is really a lot of space, and that is garlic that's all tucked in there. In this space, something similar. It's fully planted. 1, 2, 3 broccoli plants. Collards. There's Swiss chard in the middle. Collards, Swiss chard, and collards. Really overplanted, but it's producing well. Tucked in there, I have some marigolds. I have the indeterminate tomato in there, going to get to size. You can eat the leaves of broccoli, by the way. So if the crown doesn't form well, you can certainly eat the leaves. The collards, the Swiss chard back there, they're going to continue to grow through the summer. Eventually they'll kind of die out, but that's going to take up a lot of the space. I also put it under my nectarine tree so that they get a little bit more shade. They're not beaten down by the sun. The tomato plant's going to get the most sun. So there's a little bit of strategy, even in this little space, of plants that tend to like the cooler weather, get them a little bit more shade. But notice that I mixed in cool weather crops. These are going to be out soon. Crops that can start in the cold weather, go through the summer. Maybe you pull them out towards the end of the summer. Crops that like the heat, but you can mix them together and kind of get the timing down. I have peppers growing, so as the broccoli comes out, peppers will go into there. All right, let me spin around. This is 2nd-year kale, by the way. So I planted this last year. Kale's a biennial. And when it comes back the 2nd year, if it survives your winter, it has all these beautiful buds and flowers, which are completely edible. I eat them all the time. All right, in this space, I have some Russian sage to attract pollinators. These are all 10-gallon pots. This is oregano. It's a perennial. It does beautifully. This will all be getting cut and dried for the first wave of oregano. I don't know. There's probably about 30 peas in here. You can really pack peas closely together. They're starting to flower. They're going to be producing over the next couple of weeks. You can also eat the tender tendrils. They taste just like peas. What's important is mixed in here, I have 1 tomato cage, 2 tomato cages, 3 tomato cages to provide support for the peas. As these die out, as the heat rolls in, this can get planted up with a zucchini plant, pole beans, all kinds of different crops can go into here. We've already talked about tomatoes and peppers. Growing cool weather crops, you could put in radishes, which I did have a wave right down the middle. I've already pulled them out. You could put carrots in here. I have potatoes growing, which I'll show you towards the end of the video because we have to go outside the garden here. There is so much you can do with containers and with vertical towers. You just want to pace yourself. You want to have a plan of what crops like the cool weather, what crops can survive cool weather, do pretty good in the summer, maybe kind of die out, and then you have your warm weather crops that you want to get in when the temperatures are right, because they really thrive in the warmth and they don't like a frost. But just take a look at how much is growing in here, and it's not a really big space, but this is plenty for, definitely for 1 person, for 2 people, and you could even really work this space so a family of 4 can get regular vegetables out of here. I mean, you can put so much in. And please subscribe. You'll get to see how this transitions over, all the different plants that go into here and how well they do. I'll show you how I take care of them, how I fertilize them. You know, here's the rest of my garden. I'll be talking about all this space in other videos. This is a tower that's just starting to get planted up. I just put in marigolds, I have strawberries in there, and I'll see what else I'm going to pop in there. Different kinds of raised beds. These all have open bottoms. Here's my other vertical tower garden. I've had one of these, I don't know which one because they almost look the same, but one of the lighter colored ones for over 7 years. They sit outside in my garden 24/7, so I'm not taking them inside or protecting them. They're not really fading, they're not cracking from the sun. They do, you know, really, really well. This was my cool weather tower. So this is cilantro that's starting to flower. I'm gonna let it flower because it attracts beautiful bees and pollinators. Spinach I've been harvesting out of there. Kale plant, a little bit purpley looking, which means I need to give it some nitrogen. This is parsley, does really well. Spinach, and we're coming down here. Wanted to just show you. Let's see if I can do this. Well, I guess I'll pull them both out. Now, the carrots are a little bit twisted. These are shorter carrots, but you could grow carrots in here too. And, you know, they're tasty. Not maybe totally practical to put 2 or 3 carrot seeds per pocket, but there's a lot of pockets, so maybe you want to do a few carrots. You could definitely put peas in there. I'm in process of transitioning over. This is a Fantastico grape tomato determined variety. Another one I just put in there. Here's a kale plant that's doing better. This tier is probably just a little bit better fertilized, so fertilizer makes a big difference. Lettuce I've been harvesting. If you cut your lettuce, leave the roots in, you'll get another growth out of it. One of the things that might be affecting that kale plant is this top tier dries first. So pretty much I probably let this dry out. Moisture tends to stay better in here because it's basically got a top and they just, you know, hold the moisture better. Moisture changes. This dries out quickly. I'm not watering it as much. Small dinosaur kale there. Bigger dinosaur kale here, both planted at the same time at the same size. I have strawberries in that tower. Dropping in my pepper plants. I like putting in flowers, maybe on the bottom tier. I just think it's attractive. It attracts good pollinators, good insects, all that kind of stuff. In here, tiny Tims, they're going to be going into these pockets as I'm cleaning them out. Another pepper plant tucked in there. This is primarily where I like to grow my strawberry plants. But this year I decided to combine strawberry plants with pepper plants, and I'm getting really 2 different things. I'm getting fruit, obviously, strawberries, and then I'll be getting different kinds of peppers out of here. You can really grow any kind of pepper in here. The poblano, for instance, might get 4 feet tall. That's a little big. Banana peppers do really well. Bell peppers do really well. Any pepper that's staying somewhere between 2 and 3 feet works really well in the containers. You could load them in, you know, 6 per tier, but I recommend doing 3 per tier and something else in between. So here are my potatoes. Containers are perfect for growing potatoes. That's a 100-gallon root pouch. I have potatoes layered in the bottom half and in the top half to really maximize the space, and they're just doing beautifully. The larger the container, again, and this is what I want to stress for this video because this is where people have the most trouble, is they get all their tinier plants in, they do well, but soon as it's actually only middle of May, these plants are getting really big. So you're putting in your potato pieces, you're packing them in there. If you put them in the wrong container or you put your plants in the wrong container, they're going to do well, then they're going to get big. Why is that important? The struggle people have mostly with potatoes is when they get to this size is sometimes you have to water them every day when the heat comes. Keeping that moisture in there is going to get a beautiful potato harvest. So you really want to balance the mature size of the plant with how hot your summers get and with how often you can water. These plants are beautiful. They just got a dusting of a organic dust because the Colorado potato beetle is here now laying eggs, so I want to take care of them. That's a 20-gallon root pouch. There are 1, 2, 3, I don't know, probably 8 seed potatoes I put in there. You can overplant your containers, even your vertical towers, if you can, you know, be in the position to maybe water twice a day when it's really hot. If you keep the water-soluble fertilizers coming, because these plants are sucking the life and the moisture out of these containers, if you keep the water-soluble fertilizers going, you can grow just about anything you want in a container. Some more raised beds, lots of onion, lots of garlic. Here's the container garden from the outside. I really like the way it looks. And it's a nice mix of the cool crops, the warm crops. Let's just move right in here. So for this video, I just wanted to show you all the different options. You can put in a trellising system like this. This is just basically a metal frame that gets dropped into concrete to reinforce it. And I just put it in to the root pouch, filled it, and then I can grow peas up there. This will actually get cucumbers. I can put in full-size cucumbers, maybe 2 plants there, and just trellis it around here. Bush cucumbers, I could maybe get 3 in there. So there's different strategies for growing vertically in your containers, like having to put these cages in here to support the peas. When these are all done, I can put in another wave of tomatoes or something in there, or I can put in pole beans. Pole beans are going to need more, but this is a great start for pole beans to really secure to that, and then I can put in stakes. So the planting combinations are really endless, and I think we'll end for this video kind of just showing you what you can grow and stressing the point for what, the 10th time in this video? You want to match the mature size of your plants, and even how much you pack them together, crowd them into a space, with the size of the container, how hot your summers get, what the plants will be like when they're mature, and really how often you can water and how often you can feed them. And in the video description, I'll have that video that shows you how to set up soil. But this is my container garden and my vertical garden. Please subscribe. I'll be doing an ongoing series here showing you the harvest, the care, all the different plants you can get in there. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. And if you're in a place, like maybe you're renting or something like that, and you're not maybe allowed to dig gardens, or you don't want to spend a lot of money on metal beds or wood beds, the pouches are great, or plastic containers are great, but pouches are a lot less expensive because you can fill them up. They're easy to pick up. You can dump the soil out. You can take the pouches with you in case you move or something like that. But bottom line, they're really, really effective for growing just about any kind of vegetable. Thanks for watching.